Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for April the 29th. Can you believe May is right around the corner? I can't. Today's show is brought to you, as always, by Nana's Porch, the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Nana's Porch is your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a rehearsal dinner, a birthday, wedding anniversary, graduation, or engagement celebration. Also, as we know, wedding season is right around the corner. So go to the homepage, nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. Tell him Keith Alsep over at Gamecock Pod Live sent you. They'll take good care of you. They will customize your menu to meet your needs. And the customer service and the quality of food is unparalleled. Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs. All right, let's go right out. We'll get to our news, notes, and headlines later in the day. I'm really loving that Braves cap, my man, as the Braves have the best record in professional baseball right now. Hot beat the Tigers last night 5-2. And so, Michael, a few weeks ago, you left Phoenix after a massive win over UConn, which kind of felt like that LSU game in retrospect in the SEC tournament, and then UCLA. South Carolina just was not the same team. All credit to UCLA. They made the play, 6 seniors, 5 first-round draft picks. All 6 seniors picked in the top 18 picks of the WNBA draft. I know Lulu Kesson and I both felt UCLA should have been the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament because of their record, particularly against Quad 1, and UConn's record was mostly against Quad 3 and 4 opponents. And certainly they had not seen a defense like South Carolina. But when you left Phoenix, did you imagine this much stuff would be going on with South Carolina women's basketball?
You know, a little bit, but not, I don't think, to the extent that stuff like news has happened. I figured they would, add a player or two in the portal. I thought they were done in the class of 26. When Oliviyah Edwards opened up her recruitment, I was like, nah, there's no. It just, my gut reaction was, okay, like she's going to go get paid a bag to go somewhere else. Yeah, I was when Jordan Lee came on her visit. Initially, I was like, like that would be interesting. I wonder if they sealed the deal there because knowing that Kamora Johnson from UVA had reportedly been in town, I kind of figured of those three, they'd get 2 out of the 3, not all 3. And my gut reaction was they would probably, if they were going to get 2 out of the 3, it would have been the 2 guards. Granted, they end up with Jordan Lee, which is just a phenomenal get. I mean, the potential for like a Splash Sisters-esque kind of vibe with her and Tessa could be really good. Obviously, Oliviyah Edwards is a phenomenal player with a very deep toolbox who has a super high upside. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, this past season somewhere in maybe December or January, one of the several times that South Carolina was like deep into the injury weeds of dealing with people being hurt. I think I asked Dawn, I said, with you can carry 15 and you typically only carry 13 players on a roster. Would you ever consider carrying more because of the injuries you've dealt with this season? And she, before I could even finish this question, said, no, 12, 13 max. And now we have 14 on the roster. So just adjusting, and yeah, it's been a busy off season, that's for sure.
All right, so let's go one at a time.
Okay.
And I'll leave this and then we'll get back to it. We'll unpack it in just a minute. When Oliviyah Edwards went in the transfer portal, or not transfer portal, but announced she was getting out of her letter, what if I told you I already knew she was coming to South Carolina? Let's get back. We'll hold that. So number one, after the season, South Carolina finishes runner-up for the second straight year, 3 straight national championship appearances, 6 straight Final Fours. Only Gino and UConn has ever done that. Okay, not Pat Summitt, did not go to 6 straight Final Fours. No other coach, Kim Mulkey, the coach that retired at Stanford, Tara Vanderveer. I was going to call her something else, but we'll stick with that. Legendary coach who, as documented, put Dawn Staley and all those Olympians just through a living hell, including Rebecca Lobo, kind of like Christian Laettner with the Dream Team. Nobody. And so I think we need to stop for a moment and recognize South Carolina. I think the fans and the fans in general have just come to expect it, but you better appreciate it because it's never been like this, and there's no guarantee when Dawn Staley's gone it will ever happen again. And South Carolina was only one of 3 teams, period, and one of 2 Power 4 teams, UCLA the other one, and they did graduate half their roster, that did not lose a single player to the transfer portal. In this age, I mean, let's unpack that because that's just unheard of, but it's not really that unheard of with South Carolina with Dawn Staley.
Yeah, I went back and looked at it, and I think this is the 3rd time since the portal was created in 2018 that South Carolina did not lose a player from their roster to the transfer portal. The other 2 times, off the top of my head, I wrote about it, so you can fact check me for my own story, but I think the last 2 times, they were back-to-back years. I think it was the 1920 season and the 2021 season were the last 2 times. Yeah, I mean, it's just a testament to everything that Dawn has built in the program. And I mean, it's as simple as that. Is in this day and age where a lot of it, you can argue that a lot of the I don't want to call it selfishness. I want to call it putting in college athletics for so long it was putting the school, putting the programs first, and then the student athletes kind of rarely getting their slice of the pie. I'm very happy that they're getting their slice of the pie now, but as a result, it's kind of this, hey, I got to take care of me first before I take care of the program in the school. In this day and age of that, it's rare for people to go, no, I'll put the program first. And that's what Dawn has been able to do. I mean, she's fostered a culture where that's the norm, and if you don't like it, you leave. Like that's part of it. I mean, Asia Wilson didn't start her freshman year. Like, I mean, this is not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for almost a decade now. So yeah, I mean, I was surprised simply because every year we go into the portal, we go, okay, here's 3 or 4 who, despite the culture and everything, this mystique, like we have to be real for a second. These 3 or 4 could leave. Like I could see them leaving, and they didn't leave. I mean, it's a testament to everything Dawn's built. You go to South Carolina to win, and again, like you said, 6 straight Final Fours. I mean, it's become the expectation, and Dawn Staley continuously meets and goes beyond it.
No doubt, and that is a tribute to Coach Staley. Not a single returning player is leaving. Then you sign Jersey Robinson, who committed on December 23rd on the NBA Today on ESPN, rocking her A1s and the garnet and black. She signs Jordan Lee and Oliviyah Edwards visit. While Oliviyah Edwards is on campus, she and Dawn go to 5 Points, and they take a pose under the marquee that says it's over.
Yep.
OH-VEER, over. Okay, and so for people that don't know, the reason they call her the big OH is her name, Oliviyah. It starts with an O and ends with an H, not an A, like a lot of people named Olivia. So they call her the big O. And honestly, because according to my sources, Michael, I go back to when she came on her first official visit to South Carolina when she was a junior. And remember, as the LSU game got delayed, and so she was in Columbia longer. She took a picture with Dawn Staley. I'm like, there's no way that girl's 6'3", because I know how tall Dawn is. I've stood next to her, and I'm 6'3". I got a picture. I'm like, no. So, when Allie Turnaby's committed, everybody was like 6'4", right? Well, then we found out she was 6'7". I feel certain Oliviyah Edwards is 6'5". I mean, there's a picture of her with members of the team.
Yeah.
And she is way taller than Joyce and Chloe, who are listed 6'2" and 6'3". They're at least 6'3".
Yeah, we might have a Turnaby situation on our hands with that one. We'll see. We'll see when she gets added to the roster if they change that.
But I mean, so Jordan Lee was not the only player from Texas to hit the portal, despite the fact that as a freshman, she scored 16 points in the national semifinals against South Carolina. She was the only, it's kind of like I do think Booker had a better game than certainly she did against UCLA, where she was 3 for 23, which I never expected that. So she played as a freshman. She was good. She was highly recruited. She was the number 8 player most of her senior year for ESPN. They dropped her to number 9. She was a McDonald's All-American from Stockton, California. I think originally she has some Canadian roots, either she or her parents. Heavily recruited by South Carolina and Southern Cal and Texas. I think that was the big 3 for her. She picked Texas. Then Texas goes back to the Final Four. They win the SEC tournament. She averages 13 points per game. She started 38 of the 39 games at Texas. She was really good. Yeah. Very skilled, very talented player. When they asked Dawn Staley what she would be looking to address in the transfer portal, she mentioned lead guard to add more size and athleticism. That's what Jordan Lee adds. Maddie McDaniel now has a unique distinction. She is the only player on the roster under 6 feet tall. Yeah. Everybody was clamoring. South Carolina's got to add a point guard. So they did. Kamora Johnson from Virginia was the first transfer portal player to visit South Carolina. For a while, it looked like it was going to be South Carolina, but then Virginia gave her 1 million reasons to stay at Virginia. She's from Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And, South Carolina had plenty of money, but they weren't doing that.
Yeah.
And that just freed all that money up for Oliviyah Edwards, who visited with Jordan Lee. Then she went to Louisville for a day. Then she went to Texas for about a day and a half. So Texas, they went downtown in Austin by the theater there, and they took their own marquee picture.
I think that's in the arena. I think that's in the Moody Center.
It's right. I think it's right outside the Moody Center.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, on the marquee, oh no. So after she committed to South Carolina, somebody put both of them up side by side. I retweeted and said, one made fun, one got it done. And it is over.
Mm-hmm.
And so now this number 2 or 3 ranked player in the country, 6'3" plus, we'll just say for now, but according to a very good source, 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
So I've never seen a player like Ali Turnabees.
Yeah.
But when you turn on the film of Oliviyah Edwards, you're my guest. So what jumps out to you about her? I mean, and plus I've never seen Dawn Staley gush that openly about a signee.
Yeah. I mean, she's a dog. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. I mean, she's been dunking for a while. I love the amount of dunkers that this team has now. I can't wait for that to actually happen in a game. But no, I mean, Oliviyah Edwards is she's phenomenal. She's athletic. She's long. I mean, Dawn said it herself. She's already has such a deep toolbox and an elite skill set for someone who's coming in as a freshman. So I think learning from Chloe Kitts and Joyce Edwards and Ashlyn Watkins is going to be massive. I know it's a jam-packed roster, and it's going to be hard for anybody not in the starting 5 to, kind of get minutes. But I think of the freshmen, Jersey and Oliviyah probably have the biggest chance to come in and make the biggest impact right away. So we'll see in those first couple of games just like how Oliviyah adapts and if she'll be able to carve out a bigger role on the bench. But yeah, I mean, if it's one of those things where just simply because of where we are in college athletics, you have to say if she stays around for 4 years, it's kind of crazy to to think about just exactly what her ceiling is. I mean, I just one glimpse at any kind of highlight tape you want or whatever, just from reading Dawn's quote about her in the press release. I mean, you have to imagine the ceiling is pretty high, and we'll see how things pan out.
I mean, no doubt. So let's just quote Dawn Staley here again. Not even Jersey or any recruit in recent memory, but Dawn Staley says, Big O already has a deep toolbox and elite intangibles. She can score, pass, handle the ball, defend, process the game at a high level. She's a competitor, a communicator, a good teammate. And with that as her starting point, I interject her baseline. She has the hunger and the work ethic to continue elevating her game. We're excited to get started with Big O. I mean, I watched the film. I see the size. I see the right-handed, left-handed, two-handed dunker doing a chin-up at the McDonald's All-America game, putting her feet up above the rim. And then I see her as a trail shooting a three. Then I see her ball fake one way, go the other way, and take a defender off the dribble and finish with her left hand, pull up in the mid-range, play with her back to the basket. Like Kevin Durant is 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
But he never wanted to be listed as a 7-footer because he thought that distinction made him kind of pigeonholed him as a post player, and he's not a true post player. And I think maybe we'll see what they list her, but maybe she likes that 6'3" forward instead of 6'5", because in women's basketball, that's generally a post player.
Yeah.
Like Aaliyah Boston's 6'5". So she has a vast skill set, and I think that makes her a very dangerous addition to the roster. And the veterans better step it up because she's coming, and she and Allie. I can't wait to see what they're like after a summer with Molly Benetti and strength and conditioning and all the individual stuff. So you add them, and now you also, Chloe Kitts will be back, an all SEC forward, 6'3", and any day now, maybe even right after we get finished, at some point today, Ashlyn Watkins could officially be added back to the roster. That appears to be just a formality, from what I understand. And so, Michael, with that said, that is 14 deep and like 10 McDonald's All-Americans and 3 others that would have been like if they weren't injured or enrolled early. And then Allie Turnaby's, we'll call her a Royale with cheese All-American since she's from France, for quote. A little Pulp Fiction there. I know, a government official quoted Samuel L. Jackson. I won't do that, but
we won't open that can of worms.
Yeah, we'll just say she's a Royale with cheese All-American at 6'7". So she's dunked with 2 hands. Ashlyn Watkins dunked as a freshman against Clemson. As a sophomore, she dunked. As a junior, she dunked over a 6'7" player from right up the road in Liberty Hill, Texas, that was a McDonald's All-American. Big O has dunked.
I think Gotti here has dunked too.
Gotti who was the only player from a major sport, football, men's, women's basketball, baseball, to win an award at the Gamecock Athletics Gala event, which was held earlier in the week. She was the freshman female athlete of the year. And so it kind of creates a conundrum here because Gotti, honestly, you could say, and probably from her perspective, she thinks she was South Carolina's best player during the NCAA tournament.
Mm.
And so now you have an opening at point guard. We assume Maddie McDaniel is the presumptive starting point guard. Tessa Johnson returns.
Mm.
But then you have Gotti, who's like the plastic person, plastic man, but her length is so sneaky. And like you said, she can dunk. There's video of her throwing it down. But she's just fearless and offensively was unstoppable for the most part in the NCAA tournament as a freshman who was slowed because of injuries. Earlier, we didn't get the full Gotti experience until the NCAA tournament. So, and a legendary recruit who, by the way, Jersey Robinson broke Juju Watkins' records at Sierra Canyon High School. She's coming in. I mean, that competition, Isla McDowell, who was a McDonald's All-American from here in Texas, she had multiple games where she hit 4 3-pointers and 3 3-pointers. All these players, 2 positions.
Yeah.
You're looking at how could that shake out with Gotti and Jordan Lee and Tessa Johnson? That seems like 3 players for 2 spots.
Yeah, I think my gut says right now, Maddie McDaniel's the starting point guard. Granted that it's one of those things where, like, Raven after the season was like, yeah, it's Maddie's. And then when I asked Maddie in the locker room after, I was like, do you feel like you're ready? And she was like, if that's what my role is, I will absolutely accept it. Like, I'm ready to be the starting point guard. And then you do kind of get in an interesting spot, to your point, with that 2-guard spot where do you bring Jordan Lee in from Texas just to bring her off the bench? Or do you give Agat McKeer the chance to start? What do you do? Either way, I mean, you either have a superstar 6th man in Jordan Lee, or you have a budding star 6th man in Agat McKeer. So I don't think you could go wrong either way with having either of those start. When I did like a way too early rotation projection last week. Right now I have McDaniel, Jordan Lee, Tessa, Joyce, and Chloe Kitts as the starters, and then Agat McKeer kind of leading that second unit, with Jersey kind of being the main ball handler in the second unit. Granted, that could all get thrown away tomorrow, or we could get to September and Dawn tell us, hey, actually, we're going to start Jersey and Agat McKeer. Like, who knows? Literally, it's one of those things where I write those projected rotations and I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, I think in terms of ball knowledge, it's like 1% compared to Dawn Staley's 99.99. But it's funny, like, you sit and you look at the rotation. I mean, it's where last year it was, they're struggling for depth at time. This team depth should not be an issue. And it's one of the, like, it puts my brain in pretzels to imagine getting everyone on this roster minutes and keeping everyone happy, but also, putting together the best lineup out there. But to your original question, I feel like right now it's probably the first 3 guards out are going to be Maddie McDaniel, Jordan Lee, and Tessa Johnson, and then have some combination of Jersey and Gotti and probably Isla coming off the bench.
Along with Allie Turnabees, Ashlyn Watkins, and or the Big O.
Yeah.
Like that's 11 players.
Yeah.
Without, Adele Tack has battled injuries. Kaylee Wynn
And
is injured. Kelsey Andrews has been injured. She played in the Ball is Life pickup game that was on YouTube. She is a post player that can shoot the three, but is kind of built like Elena Coach. She's a big-bodied post. Oliviyah Edwards is more of a leaner, kind of like Ashlyn Watkins, 6'5".
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't know, but I agree with you, and I've been saying this. Jersey Robinson, from what I've seen, she's a big physical guard.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a jet. Like Maddie is a jet.
Yeah.
But Gotti can play point guard. Tessa can play point guard. But I really see Jersey being that, like you, the primary ball handler and running that second unit like Destiny Henderson did early in her career. So before I let you go, there is one thing I wanted to mention, because now, Jordan Lee was named by Chantel Jennings at The Athletic as the #1 transfer portal fit at South Carolina because she's long, she's a defender, she's a team player. That just really always made sense. I mean, I felt like that was over before she even visited. From talking to my source, I got like Jordan Lee with the padlock emoji. And but at the Final Four, at the end of that game, I'm sure you had a good vantage point. Gino lost more than a basketball game. He about lost his mind. And then he almost got his ass whipped. We'll just save that for another day. But I think he really felt, after he housed South Carolina twice the year before, entered the NCAA tournament as a 2 seed, destroyed everybody, marched through the NCAA tournament like Sherman through the South in the Civil War. Hey, I'm back on top. I'm the king of the hill. I got Sarah Strong. We're going to win 4 straight. I'm going to retire. And then they played a very weak schedule. I said this. Their only close game was against Michigan, who was a solid ball club.
Yeah.
But UCLA beat Michigan by 50 in the Big Ten tournament championship game. Texas beat them by 36 in the Elite Eight. They were not ready.
Yeah.
I mean, they did not have Page. They did not have a big 3. They had a big 2 and a bunch of role players who had basically faced a bunch of College of Charleston, Providence, Marquette. I mean, 20 of their wins were against quad 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And if UConn would have won that game, do you think he would have mentioned anything about a handshake? I don't. I think he knew he got knocked back down.
Yeah.
And that he was not on the pedestal. That Dawn Staley, even though they didn't win on Sunday, which honestly, that game is played way too soon in comparison to the men's semifinals and finals game, which is in prime time. The women's final should go back to prime time as well. South Carolina's first 2 national championships, it was in prime time. But I want to get your take on as it's unfolding, that whole thing, and then kind of the fallout of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I was behind South Carolina's bench when that happened. But so you got to remember, it happened with 0.8 seconds left on the clock.
Yes.
My face is down in the laptop. I am finishing the final score. Like all I had to do before I hit publish on my story at that point was fill out the final score and like 2 other stats that I like needed to have right at the buzzer and then hit publish. So I'm like, okay, put it in the final score now. I got to look down. And then I hear whistles blowing and I look up and I see Dawn being held back. So I missed the initial bit, even though I was right there. But I tell you what, my phone blew up for the next 20 minutes. I had friends going, "Hey, did you see it? What happened? What happened?" And I'm like, I don't even know what happened. I'm sitting right here and I don't know what happened because I have a job to do, people. Like, my job was to hit publish right when that clock got to 0. So and most of us were like that, I think, because I think it was me, Lulu Kesson, and then David Cloninger were all right there in a row. And I'm pretty sure we were all like typing away, trying to quick hit publish right when the clock hit 0. So I missed like the literal first 75% of the skirmish, whatever you want to call it, because my head was in my laptop.
Could you hear Dawn Staley screaming?
No, I didn't. So I didn't know she said what she said until after the fact, because also it was so loud. I think Kareem Copeland from ESPN was the one who posted that video. He was right there. I mean, he had the perfect view. But no, I like saw at that point I was up and I saw Dawn yelling. I could not hear what she was saying. But then just the whole the aftermath of it. I mean, my coworker Chapel Fowler was the one who asked, "Hey, like there are pictures and videos of a handshake happening. Like what are you talking about?" So it was kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I wasn't in that press conference room because I was in an open locker room with South Carolina, and then came out and the press conference room was packed. So they had like an overflow viewing area, which was essentially a TV on a stand, and they had a speaker kind of like not in the tunnel, but like in the basement of the arena essentially. And we were sitting there, and eventually a couple assistants from South Carolina like came by and like stopped by and listened for a second and then like kept walking. But I mean, I sat there and I listened to Gino talk, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I think it was trying to, I don't like to speculate publicly on stuff like this, but I think it was interesting. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of people probably lost some respect for Gino. And I think it was handled very poorly on his part. And, I know he put the apologies out, but
the first one completely lame.
Yeah.
Did not even mention Dawn Staley by name.
Yeah. I'm not a PR professional, but I think the first one probably could have been handled better. Yeah, it was just a really interesting Final Four game. And to Dawn's point, it overshadowed a defensive masterclass. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway, is the fact that, I finished covering a Final Four game, and the story I wrote about how they locked down one of the better offenses in the country with the literal number 1 overall pick and a future probably number 1 overall pick on it. Nobody read that. Everyone read, "Hey, they got in an argument." And I think that was kind of the story of the game, was it got overshadowed by some BS. But we'll see. It's all in the past, apparently. So we'll see how things look at the handshake line in Ucasville, or however the hell you say it, at the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame showcase in November.
Yeah, I mean, it started at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah,
with the interview with Holly Rowe when he's.
I got text about that like mid game. I'm like, I can't hear Holly Rowe do an interview on the other side of the court, guys. You got to calm down. But it was interesting. One thing I did.
So let me say this. So they asked the student athletes questions first, then the coach.
Yeah.
So they asked Sarah Strong about the jersey.
Yeah.
tear.
Yeah, that was another thing that was weird.
She admitted she tore her own jersey. Now, look, while the game's going on, maybe he didn't see. I mean, obviously he didn't see that. But for him after that to still stick to his story, okay, either he was not listening to her or he just had a senior moment.
The doubling down when there was lots of video and photo evidence was really weird. And maybe it was no one clued him in, or maybe it was like I'm neck deep in it. I got to double down now and like just write it out. But yeah, there were the jersey rip, the handshake taking place, like all of the weird photo evidence stuff was it was absurd.
And actually, that handshake is only for the national championship game.
Yeah, I did think it was funny when Dawn and Corey Close made a point to hug.
That's right.
For the game. I was like, everybody calm down. They hugged. We're fine. Let's play basketball, please.
Michael, I can't thank you enough. I've kept you too long. Thanks for being so gracious with your time. I'm glad you didn't have to jet out in the middle of the segment due to some breaking news.
Yeah.
Which I've been digging around on with a mutual friend of ours and a couple of other sources.
We'll see.
Yeah. But thanks. Go Braves.
Yeah.
Go Gamecocks. Certainly the now South Carolina is the number one preseason team.
Yeah, I can tell you now. I'm assuming the AP has me back next year. They'll be number one on my ballot unless something crazy happens between now and then.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the NCAA tournament expanding to 76 teams, but
it's garbage. I'll tell you that. I'll give you my opinion.
Why in the name of Bobby Knight, Henry Iba, and Dean Smith and James Naismith?
Yeah,
are we doing that? But anyway,
when has it ever been about the student athletes, Keith? When has it ever been about the fans? They got to make more money.
I mean, it's more MEAC and ODAC.
And honestly, if more mid-major teams are getting in, I'm all for it. Because those are the MEAC schools, to your point, those are the programs that need those units. If they get units for those play-in games like they did in the first four, I'm all for it. I want more mid-majors in. Now, if you're going to add in
Auburn at 18
like 12,
and 18,
12 bottom-feeding P4 teams, I don't care. I'd rather watch a Norfolk State or a Hampton or Tennessee State or teams like that.
Miami of Ohio.
Miami, Ohio, like mid-major teams who can actually benefit from the money and are going to go out there and play 1,000%. I would much rather watch a game between two mid-majors with an NCAA tournament spot on the line than Auburn versus Pitt or something.
I'm sure Dawn Staley would be for Bowling Green and Grand Canyon. Getting into the tournament.
Yeah,
yeah. Michael, you are a treasure. Thank you so much for being gracious with your time, and I look forward to catching up with you down the road. Be well, my friend.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right, that was Michael Sauls in a gifted extended segment on Gamecock women's basketball. So I never thought I'd be talking about the NCAA tournament expanding again. I mean, they went from 64 to 68, and they went with the first four. Now you're adding 8 more teams. That's 12 more than they should have. I remember when they went from 48 to 64. And I remember when I was a kid, and South Carolina went undefeated in the ACC and then lost in the tournament semifinals. Or no, they won But John Roach sprained his ankle, missed the final, and South Carolina did not win the ACC tournament. They didn't get to go to the NCAA tournament because only the tournament champion got to go, and the East Regional was in Columbia. It was set for South Carolina to go to the Final Four. With 32 teams, you play 2 games in Columbia, just like Dawn Staley and the gang does. And then you go to the Final Four and you play UCLA for the national championship, or Houston with Elvin Hayes, who a lot of y'all probably never heard of. All right, so there were a few news and notes items. Baseball dropped a midweek game at Founders Park last night to the Citadel 4-0. They didn't need to do that. That midweek loss, not sweeping Kentucky, I think probably put the nail. If South Carolina, honestly, to make the NCAA tournament, would probably have to sweep the final 3 SEC series of the season. They will play this weekend at LSU. Last night, Shane Beamer gave a non-update on the what did I call it? On the injury progression / health of defensive end Dylan Stewart and left tackle Jacarius Peak. Dylan Stewart did not participate in spring practice. His back is still bad. Beamer probably wishes he hadn't have said that Dylan Stewart played with a broken back the last half of the season. Quote, nothing new on Dylan. Best thing for him is rest. That's what he's doing. Our guys, yesterday was the last day of class in Columbia, so they're getting ready for exams this week. They get a little bit of a break, but most of the guys are planning on, those 2 guys in particular, plan on being around Columbia most of May. I want them to be able to get home for a little bit. But as far as recovery-wise, they're ahead of schedule. Both feel great. And time frame is still the same as we head into the season. Beamer had said he fully anticipated Jacarius Pete would be ready to roll when September rolls around, and the same for Dylan Stewart. But I think Beamer said he thought he would be 100% by the end of May. We'll see, but I don't know. That's 2 of South Carolina's top 4 or 5 most important players. And honestly, South Carolina, if those guys are all healthy, could have 4 first-round draft picks. The most they've ever had is 3. Maybe 2. But Lenore Sellers, Dylan Stewart, Nicholas Harbor, Jacarius Peak. He's certainly one of the top 2 or 3 left tackles when he went in the transfer portal. He was number 1. And then Jordan Seaton from Colorado went in the portal, and he was number 1, and Peak was number 2. But Peak, he's a 4th-year player. Hopefully those guys are ready. So softball took down South Carolina State 9-1 in run rule fashion last night. They moved to 30-22. They won their 2nd straight SEC series. They need to keep the momentum going to make the NCAA tournament. And I never thought I would ever see or be talking about a college quarterback, even though Art Schleister at Ohio State way back in the day, he got caught gambling. But Brendan Sorsby, who Texas Tech paid $5 million, it's reportedly, they beat out Lane Kiffin and LSU. Honestly, now I wish he would have gone to LSU. I told some friends that yesterday. He got caught when he was a redshirt freshman at Indiana. He placed thousands of bets on football on Indiana. None of them were prop bets. So now he has a mental health issue, a gambling addiction. And so Sorsby, after the fact, has taken a leave of absence from school after he transferred from Cincinnati to Texas Tech. It was announced that he would check himself into a residential treatment program for gambling addiction. And by rule, this would make him, since he bet on college football, ineligible. But you better believe those oil and gas lawyers and the money that Texas Tech has, that, in my opinion, this is orchestrated for him to be eligible at Texas Tech because they want to protect their investment. And the only other quarterback they have on the roster is recovering from a torn ACL and won't even be ready for at least until October. So you know they got to have him. So ESPN Pete Thamel was first to publish the article and said, according to sources, Sorsby bet on Indiana football while redshirting as a true freshman in 2022. He bet on, he placed thousands of bets on a gaming app. And so the NCAA is now investigating his gambling as the organization forbids athletes from betting on both college and pro sports. So we'll see. My bet is, or my guess is, I don't gamble really, a little bit. Prize Picks, MyBookie.ag, FanDuel. Well, we advertise for all of them. I've used all of them a little bit here and there. No timetable for Sorsby's treatment, as sources said that, according to Pete Thamel's story from yesterday, that his situation is being treated as a mental health matter and that Sorsby will be afforded the time he needs. Joey McGuire, not Jerry Maguire, Joey McGuire, the head coach at Texas Tech, says, "We love Brendan. You better bet you do, after you reportedly paid him $5 million from the transfer portal and support his decision to seek professional help. Taking this step requires courage, and our primary focus is on him as a person. Our program is behind Brendan as he prioritizes his health." Look, it is a problem. People do get addicted to gambling, just like they get addicted to drugs and alcohol and sex and all sorts of things. And so if this is an addiction issue, I pray for his well-being and recovery. This is not the first time we've seen a public effort to begin rehabilitation of somebody's reputation. So I have some skepticism, but if it is an issue, I pray for his recovery and his well-being. I mean, it's documented. Steve Sarkisian was an alcoholic. He lost his job at Southern Cal. He went to Alabama and he credits Nick Saban and Dan Quinn with when he went to the Falcons, and then he went back to Alabama when Quinn got fired. He credits those two men with basically helping him save his life. It was a serious issue. And if Brendan Sorsby has this issue, I went to college with guys that they were addicted to gambling. So Texas Tech, we'll see what happens there. All right. Alex Jones joined me yesterday afternoon. He's currently on the road in the state of North Carolina. We broke down South Carolina this weekend will host at least 11 official visitors. We broke down and previewed that first official visit weekend, and we talked about South Carolina's commitments, in particular, the two most recent commitments, both from the state of Texas. I go into that because that's exactly the way Kendall Briles, who was a monster recruiter at Baylor, helped build that program. They got kids committed from Texas that didn't have Texas offers, but the evaluations were on the money. And he would sign 10, 11 players in a recruiting class. Sometimes he would get committed more than that, and 2 or 3 of them would blow up their senior year. And Texas or Oklahoma or Southern Cal or Notre Dame would come in and take them away from little old Baylor. So we talked about that, and we previewed this first big official visit weekend. So I'm going to pop out, and you'll see me in a black rowback hoodie yesterday, sitting in my nice, cool office, previewing South Carolina's big recruiting weekend with Alex Jones from the Big Spur. So hang tight for just a second. All right, we are joined by our good friend at the Big Spur 24/7. I founded along with J.C. Sherbert in 2007, and it has grown into one of the top 24/7 sports sites on the web. And we are joined by our main man and one of the hardest working dudes I know, co-host of the late night show, along with Matt, Alex Jones. Alex, welcome in. Can you believe it's almost May? Does it seem like it?
It doesn't, but it's getting to the point where I feel like I say that for just about every month now here these past few months. Like, I can't believe it's already April, or I can't believe it's already February. But, I mean, Friday's already May 1st. It's pretty crazy. But good thing about that is, the closer we get, it means closer we're getting to football season. So just some silver linings there.
So what do you think about, is SEC Media Days in Jacksonville?
I think it's in Tampa.
That's right, Tampa.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. That's been the site of several huge Gamecock Bowl wins, all of which I have seen in person. Every one of the ones we won. The only one I did not go to was Iowa in 2008 because I had just moved to Austin. And I just didn't really feel good about that team. They had a bunch of guys that were already checked out. But that's a different era of Gamecock football. That was when David Pollock was calling Steve Spurrier 5-loss Spurrier. And then when 2010 came, you couldn't call him that anymore until the end. So we are recording this on Tuesday afternoon because when you see this on Wednesday on Gamecock Pod Live, Alex will be on the road checking out high schools in Georgia,
North Carolina tomorrow.
North Carolina, the Tar Heel State, where Shane Beamer has certainly made that a priority. But we want to talk to Alex about the latest in Gamecock football recruiting. And that starts with less than 48 hours ago. Prosper, Texas offensive lineman Will Endicott, 6'4", 285. He committed the Gamecocks, choosing South Carolina over Kansas, Kansas State, Wake Forest, a lot of good Baylor, a lot of good schools in the Big 12 and in the ACC. Alex, what do you know about Will Endicott and what kind of player is South Carolina getting?
Yeah, when South Carolina hired Kendall Browse, they started to kind of get it, and Randy Clements, they started to kind of get into Texas recruiting a little bit. You've seen some offers go out. They've got, some wide receiver offers, some quarterback offers in that 27 class, 28 class for the state of Texas. And, Will Endicott was one that they got on pretty early after arriving at South Carolina. And, I think it's, a really good recruiting win for South Carolina for, some of the things you mentioned there. You have some guys, some Big 12 schools there that are closer to home for Will Endicott in Prosper, Texas, that, but you find a way to get him to South Carolina. And, you kind of mentioned his size, a guy that's 6'4", 285. But I think some things that really stand out to him about what you watch him on film is, you see a lot of, most of his highlights are at left guard from this past season, but he's the guy that plays with a lot of aggression, plays really kind of mean style, which, Randy Clements and those guys have talked about. That's what they're looking for in the offensive line. But, a guy that I think, probably, projects from an interior spot when he gets to college, but moves really well. A guy that can get to that second level, but, he's, taking guys to the second level with him in a lot of his highlights, but he finishes blocks and does a really good job. So, a guy that, right now at 24/7 Sports is unranked, but just because he's been a guy that, like some of these guys that they've offered in this offensive line class that, they're really starting to get on and have seen their recruitments kind of take off since the beginning of the year. So I think it's a really, good pickup for South Carolina that down the road, whenever he gets more film, more kind of recognition, it's going to be looking like an even better pickup for him.
Yeah, so for people that don't really know, Prosper, Texas used to just be the country, okay? It's probably over 30 miles outside of downtown Dallas. So if you go up 75, you're going to go Dallas, Addison, Plano, Frisco, McKinney, and then Prosper. And the first two people, brand name recognition, Deion Sanders and Troy Aikman, because of all the land out there, Deion had like a half of a football field in his backyard and a full-length basketball, like a gym. And Troy Aikman had a ranch out there. Ultimately, Teresa and one of her best friends started a Montessori school there in Prosper. And she was living in McKinney when I met her in Dallas in 2008. And now it's just exploded, the whole Metroplex. Kind of like here in Austin, kind of like Greenville's exploded. Yep. Like when I was in high school, Blue Ridge was 2A. And in the 90s, when I was at Bethune, in our league was McBee, North Central, Great Falls. Oh, good Lord. Sheldon Brown's high school and Indian Land. Well, Indian Land's now like a 5A high school because it's a bedroom. It's moved that south from Rock Hill, right? All that area. So Prosper's kind of like that for people that are wondering. But now they have more than one high school in Prosper. So it's a big. They have two big high schools there because it's still a growing area. They play in a great league, kind of like Waxahachie. Waxahachie's south of Dallas, and everybody goes to Waxahachie High School, just like everybody used to go to Prosper, where Jerry Meyer, the quarterback that Kendall Briles got committed, and that they play in the toughest 6A league in Texas, or in North Texas for sure. So Will Endicott probably profiles as, would you say, a center or left guard?
I think so, yeah. Just from watching his highlights and kind of learning about it, that seems to be where his future is.
All right, so he was the welcome home from yesterday. So there's another welcome home from Shane Beamer last week or weekend, maybe like almost 2 weekends ago. Are we expecting that one this weekend? And I know there's a big official visit weekend. Is there a chance that, I'm not saying this guy is or is not an official visitor this weekend, but from what I'm hearing, there could be a pretty good chance that is revealed and that recruitment gets shut down. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I think with that welcome home, I think it was just about 2 weeks ago. It seems like when that welcome home went out. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but I don't think it'll be one where it's too much longer to find out who that one was.
All right, that means by the time we go on the air tomorrow, we could know. All right, so it's hard to believe, but these coaches have been out on the road for the last almost, by this weekend, 2 weeks. April 15th, they went out on the road. They've been everywhere. I know that South Carolina is one of the Final Five for a big-time 4-star safety. Jaden Appreciation Bailey released his top 5 on Tuesday morning. I mean, no real competition here. Ohio State, Georgia, Auburn, and Clemson, although after Dabo had all those draft picks, a lot of people were like, 7 wins in a week conference and all those dudes going to NFL, you could be in trouble. So Appreciation Bailey, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, is the number 133 player, the number 9 safety. He is from Prattsville, Alabama, the Yellowhammer State, becoming more prominent, it seems like, every year for South Carolina. I mean, talk about some of the recent pickups from Alabama. There are offers out to players in this class. There's going to be more players than just this guy visiting South Carolina. And when is Appreciation Bailey? Does he have his visit date set up as of yet?
I don't think it's locked in yet with South Carolina. I know he's got a few, I think with Georgia and Auburn maybe, but with South Carolina, it's not locked in. But South Carolina's right kind of in that one, and I would expect there obviously to be one because obviously, kind of releasing that top 5. I think he's still working to finalize those things, and I would expect Carolina to get one there.
So maybe the June the 19th, because if he's not coming in this weekend, he is visiting Clemson May 29th, Georgia June 5th, Auburn June 12th. The 19th could be pretty good. He could watch the wing eating competition, I guess. All right, so I did want to mention that. All right, so let's take a look and let's preview this week's list of visitors, because there are several guys that, at least a few of them, appear to be on best bets to join the class, or players that South Carolina is trending for, and that begins with Frederick Ards from Orlando Jones High School, 6'5", 225. Considered a 90, but number 110, which tells me some networks think really highly of Frederick Ards. Where does South Carolina sit, and what do you like about Frederick Ards going into this visit?
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, this is just one of the many top edge prospects in the country that South Carolina are in on. And, they'll have a big weekend coming up in June, but, for edge prospects. But for getting Frederick Ards in this first weekend is going to be really kind of interesting to watch with him, but not, but really kind of with the rest of these other prospects too, because you get that first visit on the way. And I think, with this being the first time South Carolina's done this, we'll see kind of how successful that is, because sometimes you want that last visit, but sometimes you do want to get that first visit to see even go ahead and lock it in. But with Fred Ards, I mean, this guy's just a really, really good edge rusher, 6'5", 225, high 4-star, kind of varies a little bit there, but regardless, one of the top edge prospects in the country, down from Jones in Orlando, Florida. And I think with him, it's kind of South Carolina and Texas A&M to keep an eye on with him. But I think it kind of goes back to what I say about him in this official visit weekend. Like, can South Carolina go ahead and maybe build on a lead if they have a lead, or maybe potentially go ahead and lock one down if they can do it? But because Texas A&M's recruiting really well in this cycle too. So but I think if South Carolina can find a way to get him committed, that'd be a really, really good start to an edge group. That's South Carolina's in on some of the best ones and in a good spot for a lot of them, and Fred Ards is one of them.
No doubt about it. South Carolina's had some success at Orlando Jones in the past. That's certainly in the SEC footprint, proximity, right there, I-4. You just really go I-4 over to 95 to 26, and you're in Columbia in a few hours. All right, so Harrison Randall is listed as an athlete, but he's a linebacker, right? Out of Garner High School. Seems like there was a linebacker that was from Garner who was really good in that run of teams towards the end of the 10-win Spurrier teams. And then Chris Culliver from Garner, North Carolina as well. 6'3", 210, another 4-star guy. What stands out on film about Harrison Randall?
Yeah, a guy that can really move at that linebacker spot, at that frame of 6'3", 210. And you're kind of seeing that under Clayton White these past few years. And really since he's been at South Carolina, for guys they look at from the high school ranks at that linebacker spot, guys that can really get east to west. And, I mean, think about the guys they have on the roster right now, that all three of those guys can do that, and those rising sophomores too. Like Fred Johnson can get east to west, Sean Murphy, Justin Okoronkwo. Like, you need that in the SEC, but you also need that size too. And having that size and that speed, makes you a highly recruited guy. And that's a guy like AJ Randall. And so I think that his speed is something that really catches your attention on the highlights. And this is another one that's going to be a pretty heated recruitment for what I mentioned with what he brings to the table. But it's another one that I think South Carolina identified pretty early. Clayton White and those guys got in on him early, and now it's going to be interesting to see what kind of move can they make this weekend with him, because he's got a really strong list of official visits lined up. But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes down this weekend with him.
No doubt. All right, Seth Tillman, South Point High School in Rock Hill. One of the few guys that's probably not from early on, not a South Carolina lean from what I've gathered. 6'2", 295, another 4-star guy by the 24/7 Sports composite, the number 3 prospect in the state of South Carolina for the class of 27. Where the Gamecocks stand with Seth Tillman, how much ground do they have to make up? And at this point, the way Travian Robertson's been recruiting and some of the relationships he has, can South Carolina close the gap in this visit? They're visiting with prospects earlier to try to set the tone early with these guys.
This is one where I feel like you do want to find a way to get the first visit, and South Carolina is going to get the first official visit because I do think there is some work to be done for South Carolina with Seth Tillman. And I think Georgia's one to really watch with him. They've been kind of consistently up there, and South Carolina has been too, but I think Georgia, I mean, they have a lot to sell at defensive tackle. It's not just South Carolina, but, Georgia's just had so many guys get drafted there. And so I think that's kind of one to watch with him. And I think Clemson could be one to keep an eye on too. But this is one with him. Like, I think you wanted to get that first visit, to, as you mentioned, kind of set the tone from an official visit standpoint, but also just be able to get back in front of him with he and his family for a whole weekend to kind of pitch what you have to pitch and things like that. But I mean, Travian Robinson's doing a pretty incredible job on the recruiting chair right now. I mean, not to get way off track, but spent some time with two different tackle prospects for the 27th class at Cormier Community, who, I mean, South Carolina's in a really good spot with both of those guys. So, I mean, it's one where, it's going to be a good defensive tackle class for South Carolina, but Seth Tillman could be a guy that could take it really to another level.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, honestly, those two guys that you were talking about from North Carolina, one's 6'3", 250 that will likely grow into a 3 technique, kind of like Aiden Gibson, right?
Yeah.
So, but then you got the other 4-star guy that's like 6'4", 310 or 315 at the same high school. And based on the interviews with the players and the coach, these guys seem to just love Travian Robertson. Yeah,
Travian's put themselves in a really good spot for it. It's Josiah Fields and Nate Kamba, two defensive tackle prospects from Cormier Community. And I think in a really good spot with Josiah Fields, and I think with Nate Kamba, it's a little bit of work to be done there because he's got some guys. Or Georgia's another school. Keep an eye on there with him. NC State's there too. But I mean, the coach there really spoke highly of Travian Robinson for one, but also the connection he's built with them. But both of those guys spoke so highly about how connected they feel with them. I mean, Travian Robinson apparently while he was there at the school showed Josiah Fields how many times Nate Kamba calls them and things like that, and how often they talk. So it's I think you see that with Travian Robinson and his personality. You see that he can really connect with these guys, and now he's really kind of taking that to the next level, and that's only going to help him with the production that South Carolina's had at D tackle too.
No doubt. All right, so Jabias Smith.
Yep.
6'3", 195 from Swainsboro, Georgia. That is home of Shannon, the body bag Wadley, who was kind of an undersized linebacker when South Carolina recruited him. He played on those great Charlie Strong defensive teams early in the Lou Holtz era when South Carolina went 8-4 and 9-3. He and Kenny Harney were both integral parts of that defense, along with my guy Langston Moore, Cleveland Pinckney, Dennis Quinn, Oliviyah Edwards, and then all Sheldon Brown, Louisville High School. That was the school I meant to mention that was in our 1A league. Andre Goodman. I mean, I could name all of them. The Spurs, safeties, just an awesome defense. So what jumps out about him, and where does South Carolina stand with Jabias Smith?
Yeah, I get the feeling this is another one of those kind of we talked about with Seth Tillman where South Carolina needs to get that first visit because this is a guy just like some of these other guys we've talked about where they've been in on him for a while, kind of like with A.J. Randall. Jabias Smith has been a top of the board type of linebacker target for them. But when you're highly ranked like that and you're from Georgia, you got to watch out for Georgia for him. And he's got Texas and Auburn continue to recruit him too. And I think he's a really good player. Kind of watching him on film, I really like his huddle and some of the things he's able to do. I think try to find a way to build some momentum with him here because he's going to have another one of those long lists of visits to some of the top programs. And got to keep an eye on Georgia. In-state guy. Georgia does really well with those guys. But I think South Carolina's put themselves in a spot where they can potentially make a move this weekend.
All right, so Desmond Malpress is a kind of an undersized guy, kind of similar to Caleb Herring, who only weighed 200 or 205 when he came out of high school. Although Herring was 6'5", Malpress 6'3", probably more of a DPR, designated pass rusher, but highly regarded.
Yeah, I think with him, South Carolina's in a really good spot. And I think as far as State, it could be one to watch with him as well. But I think South Carolina's put themselves in a really good spot for him. And I mean, a guy that in the composite rankings is number 17 the edge, 147 overall. And I do agree, like when you kind of look at him right now, it could be a guy that's a designated pass rusher guy that can get him those third downs. But I think, some of that will depend on how much weight he's able to put on once he gets through his senior season into high school or into college, because it's still early for him. We haven't listed at 205 right now, but you get into that 235, 245 range. That's obviously going to help him from a run stopping standpoint. But he does some really good things in his highlights from a pass rushing standpoint. That's kind of the standout right now. And, just another one of these edge guys that South Carolina's in on that Deion Barnes has really put themselves in a good spot for.
Deion Barnes, South Carolina did not miss a beat hiring that guy.
Yeah.
All right, so let's step out of the SEC and let's go to the land of Dane Arnett in Michigan. Kalamazoo, Michigan, Dewey Young, offensive tackle, another four-star guy, the number 6 player in the state of Michigan. 6'5", 285. I think he may be intrigued by the warmer weather in the South. Jason Smith and Coach Clem kind of double teaming him. What do you like about Dewey Young?
Yeah, I really kind of, when you look at some of the things he can do, kind of at that offensive tackle spot at 6'5", 285, kind of like I talked about earlier with Will Endicott, but a guy that can really, really move and move well at his size. And you're starting to see some of the trends of what Randy Clements and Jason Smith and those guys are looking for on that offensive line. But really kind of interesting to see kind of really, it's been a casted a wide net here on this offensive line in this class. And I mean, you got already, Texas commitment and going after a guy from Michigan to Kalamazoo, Michigan. You don't see that too often around here. But, I think, it's with South Carolina, they got in pretty early here this year for Dewey Young, who another one of these guys who started to blow up once the calendar turned. But he's one that I think South Carolina's, worked themselves into a good spot for. He made a spring visit to South Carolina, kind of a multi-day visit. I think it was his first to South Carolina, and I think really went well. And I think right now South Carolina's the only official visit he has on the book. So kind of thinking this weekend, I just wanted to kind of watch for to see what happens with him. But he's got, being that he's a 4-star tackle type, like those guys, there's going to be wanted around the country. So, but I think South Carolina being able to get in early here has really helped them. And so we'll see. That's one of the guys I've kind of have circled this weekend to find out, just to hear how well it goes for South Carolina, because I think they put themselves in a good spot.
No doubt. So then now you have a trio of Georgia players, one running back, 2 secondary guys. The running back, Braden Tyson, 6', 235 from Brookwood High School in Snellville, Georgia, a big-time program. And then I really think 2 guys that could very well end up in the class, and Kennedy Green, who is a 4-star defensive back, 6'2", 195 from Douglasville, Georgia, and Brandon Allen from Westlake High School, the home of Raven Johnson and Tania Latson, and the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, just to name a few. Committed to Mississippi State, but I mean, South Carolina is probably the leader there. Your thoughts quickly on these 3 as we get ready to wrap up this list of guys.
Yeah, with Brandon Allen, you just look at his size, you're like, okay, well, I see what Torian Gray thinks of him. I mean, guy that's 6'2", I think he's 175 right now, but I think he's probably a little bit heavier than that. But that's a Torian Gray cornerback. That's what Torian Gray looks for at that size. And one that things have kind of happened pretty fast with him. They moved on, Brandon Allen pretty quickly after Amari found decommitted and signed to Florida. And I think with him, he was in for a visit. Didn't have an offer when he visited. Got a visit a few days, or landed offer, and then scheduled an official visit to South Carolina. So, I mean, it's kind of one where you see, some things that, when you see Torian Gray's pass and how well he's done with guys like these, like, I think that's something that stands out to Brandon Allen. So, one to kind of keep an eye on there too. I know he's still committed to Mississippi State, but I think South Carolina, has worked itself there Kennedy Green, that's another one that has been positioned well for South Carolina for a while. I mean, a guy that, it feels like it's been a few years now that South Carolina's targeted him and had him at that safety spot. So, I kind of like where South Carolina stands with him. And then with Braden Tyson, I think that's really interesting there with this running back board right now for South Carolina. I mean, talked to him, I think it was middle of February, so in Myrtle Beach at a 7-on-7 camp. And first of all, I mean, the size is absolutely there for him. He's 6 foot, 235 pounds, but I mean, he really, really can move. I saw him catching a lot of the ball out of the backfield a lot with his team, so really intrigued by him. But I think, South Carolina maybe is, starting to heat up a little bit with this recruitment. Like, he visited for a spring practice, and then I think one of the last practices he came back to South Carolina for another visit. So I think that shows the interest there. But Miami was one to kind of watch for a little with them for a little while. I think they maybe kind of are recruiting some other guys. Florida State's going to be one to keep an eye on there too. I think it could be a Florida State South Carolina type of battle. And I think he's got OVs to Rutgers and Purdue, if I'm right, for his other 2 official visits. But could very well be a South Carolina Florida State battle. But it's going to be interesting to hear how things go with him this weekend.
Are you old enough to remember Stanley Pritchett?
I know the name.
He played on that first bowl winning team with Tannehill. Really good. Played in the NFL. Well, originally was like a H-back tight end, and then ended up being a stud running back. All right, so the last 2 guys, tight end Judah Lancaster or Lancaster, depending on what part of the country or how he chooses to pronounce it. It could be Lancaster or Lancaster, from Brentwood Academy right outside of Nashville in Tennessee, almost 6'5", 231. This is the modern day tight end, flex wide receiver guy. I mean, I think South Carolina's looking pretty good here.
Yeah, at 6'4", 231 pounds, like, I think that's something, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, kind of be a flex tight end type of guy. That guy can line up in the spot, line up on the outside. Like, I think that's kind of what you want to see in a Kendall Browse offense and what he's been really good at with tight ends. A guy that can, kind of match up with some of those nickels on a defense, and it'd be mismatch problems. But that's kind of what you see in some of his film too. And a really intriguing guy. Like, I wonder with a senior year, like what a good senior year, what his ranking could end up doing. But I think South Carolina's been at a really good spot there for a while, and it only can help their chances there this weekend.
And then the last guy, another guy from the state of Alabama, Stafford Willis from Arab, Alabama. I'm sure that's how they say it down there. 6'5", 280, another 3-star guy. But again, when you recruit Alabama, when you recruit Texas, which we'll get to in just a second, these are the kind of guys, if you can make the evaluations and get, even in Georgia, like we've seen South Carolina do with so many players, and in Florida, they just turn out.
Yeah, and this is, I feel like I'm a broken record saying this, but another one of these guys that when Randy Clemens and Jason Smoot and them got on pretty early too, and have worked their way into this recruitment where he visited once for a spring practice, and then after spring practice was over, actually came and hung out with the staff in the facility for a day. So that kind of speaks to the interest there, and then how quickly he's scheduling an official visit. And I think with him, I think, kind of what we're talking about with Dewey Young, there's going to be some other interest there, like UCLA could be one to watch them. Stafford's got a whole list of official visits, but getting that first official visit is going to be interesting to watch with him. But another interior guy that you like the way he can move at his size, at 6'5", 280 pounds. And, I think, has the frame to continue putting on really good weight, where I think he really does project for that interior kind of center guard spot in college. But another really intriguing off the line prospect for South Carolina.
Yeah, so South Carolina has 3 commitments. 2 of them are from Texas. Quarterback Jerry Meyer III from Waxahachie, south of Dallas, Will Endicott, north of Dallas and Prosper. And Alex, I followed Kendall Browse for a long time. When Baylor started getting good, I was always looking at their recruiting list, and they would get guys exactly like these guys that were below the Texas, Oklahoma offer sheet, like Will Endicott, Jerry Meyer, TCU, SMU, Baylor, schools like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Kendall Briles, sometimes he would sign 10 or 11 guys, and he would generally have about 10 to 13 guys committed, and 2 or 3 of them would blow up and have huge senior years, and they would end up at Texas, Oklahoma, or Texas A&M or Southern Cal. Somebody would, a big blue blood brand name program would come in and steal them. And I think this is where you have to trust your coaches. I mean, it wasn't a problem for Lonnie Teasley to recruit good players. They just got worse when he was coaching them. But usually the opposite happened at Baylor with Randy Clements, with Kendall Briles, and with their coaching staff. They would get guys from out in a small town in West Texas or East Texas or South Texas or in the Panhandle that could run like a deer. And, that Baylor offense, they made you account for 55 and a half and 100 yards every, the length of the field and the width of the field on every play.
Yeah, that's kind of what excites me potentially about the offense is how spread out it is and using all that space. But to your point on the recruiting side of things, I think that's what Kendall Briles and Randy Clements know about the state of Texas, where as you well know, the state of Texas could probably have 10 5-stars themselves throughout the whole cycle. But I mean, that state's just loaded with Division I prospects that. There are a lot of guys that can play SEC football or Power 4 football, not just the guys that are even ranked right now. I mean, you're kind of seeing that with Will Endicott, a guy like him who's unranked, but you're seeing his recruitment blow up. And I think, being SEC obviously will help. But, I mean, those guys have so many connections in the state, especially Kendall Briles with his dad and the system they had there. I think they had those connections in Texas, which will only help not only with, keeping the guys that have committed in the class, but finding those under the radar guys that some of the bigger schools in the state maybe don't know about yet, but you're able to get on them early, like a Jerry Meyer, like a Will Endicott, and you're able to build those connections and be able to keep them in the class.
Not to mention all of the players he has recruited from Texas that are at other schools that at some point could enter the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think to me, that's just adds to the beauty of it is he's recruited that state for so long. Him, Jason Smith, certainly Randy Clements, some of the analysts they brought in with strong Texas ties. You're not going to sign 25 high school guys anymore. You're just not. I mean, when I look at South Carolina, though, this is Shane Beamer. Okay, let's start with this weekend. You've got 11 guys scheduled to visit. Then in June the 5th, you've got 11 guys. That's 22. June the 12th, so far 6. That's 28. And then June the 19th is, I think there'll be more than 9 because I don't think Jerry Meyer scheduled an official visit. And so that's 30-something guys. If you hit 50%, that's all you got to do to get to 15. Less than 50% to get to 15, and then you're going to add probably that many portal guys.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's kind of what I think the beauty of the transfer portal is right now, where you can have those kind of things where, maybe you don't fill up on the offensive line standpoint, that you don't fill up the numbers you need from an offensive line standpoint. So you can go into the portal and add, 2 guys there. Look at what South Carolina did at running back. I mean, they basically balanced out their whole running back room using the portal. And you obviously don't want to do that. South Carolina doesn't want to do that. Some programs do, heavily recruit the portal, but you want to be able to balance it through high school. But that does give you a little bit of a backup plan too if you need to bring in some guys like at some certain positions. But I think that's South Carolina's done a really good job of balancing that, where they do have a good balance of high school prospects that they're bringing in with their connections that they have, but they also are able to kind of backfill in for the portal if they need to.
No doubt. So I know you got to get ready for your trip. We're going to let you go. But of this list of May 1st weekend visitors, give me maybe the 3 guys that you're most excited to interview, because I'm not going to ask you to give me the guys you think could commit, but who are like the 3 guys that you want to hear post-visit what they have to say about South Carolina?
I think the guy that comes first to mind is Dewey Young, the offensive tackle from Michigan, just because that's, it's kind of been a little bit off the radar, but I think South Carolina's worked themselves in a good spot there. So he's one. Braden Tyson's another one, just because of what I said with, I think South Carolina putting themselves in a really good spot for him with the visits that he had. And then a third one, I would probably go Frederick Arts. Like, I think he's, one that, maybe, doesn't do like a ton of interviews or things like that. But I think, I'm interested to hear just the connection he talks about with Deion Barnes and things like that. And really just kind of where South Carolina stands, because I think they're in that top group for him. And, maybe this weekend can put them up in the lead.
Alex, I can't thank you enough. Appreciate everything you do. Tell everybody where they can find your work on the socials.
Yeah, on Twitter, Alex_Jones45, and it will have a whole bunch of recruiting content, team content coming up. We got the Garnet Black road trip for Shane Beamer starting underway today, and then I'll be out on the road tomorrow seeing 2 high schools up in North Carolina with 2027 prospects for South Carolina. So keep an eye on that on Twitter, then also on thebigspur.com.
At the Big Spur 24/7 on the socials. Alex Jones, the pride of Hampton County and one of the hardest working men I know. Thanks for being with us today, my friend.
Really enjoyed it. See you next time.
All right, that was my interview yesterday previewing South Carolina's first big recruiting weekend with Alex Jones. So 2 major pieces of news to leave you with. One is related to the bigspur.com, which I founded along with JC earlier this year. JC announced his departure for a new venture with Inside the Gamecocks. Today, Tony Morrell, the GCI, he and I became friends. Gamecock Central was the only website there was. One of my good friends was a graduate assistant at South Carolina. I had some pretty good information. He kind of reached out. We kind of started talking. We met for lunch. We became fast friends. I can't tell you how many practices, scrimmages, games we went to, not just in Columbia, but Ole Miss, LSU, so many SEC venues, Clemson games, etc. He, after I left the Big Spur, less than a year after founding it, to move to Texas, I told JC and the other primary investor, if they wanted to dominate the Gamecock market. They needed to do whatever it took to get Tony Morrell to the site. So I want to say it was in the early part, maybe the first quarter of 2009, Tony Morrell came over to the Big Spur. He has been the GCI when he was undercover, doing it while he worked for another business. And then he left that business to go to work full-time for Gamecock Central. But 25 years since 2001, Tony Morrell has been accurate, breaking scoop, never over-promising and under-delivering, but always being fair, giving his honest opinion and brash opinion on things at times. And I always appreciated that about him, appreciate his friendship. And he announced today that he was moving on to the next chapter in his life after 25 years covering the Gamecocks. So I wish him nothing but the best. And then the thinker, Steve Fink, who came from TCU with Eric Hyman after KT, Kerry Tharp, left South Carolina to go to work for NASCAR. The thinker, as Spurrier affectionately called him, and as I've always referred to him over the years. The thinker today says after 42 years in the athletics communication field, including the last 21 years with the Gamecocks, I have made the decision to retire from my position as Senior Associate Athletic Director for Communications, effective at the end of June. I'd like to thank everyone who has played a role in my career, notably the coaches, players, co-workers, peers, members of the media, friends, and the fans, from my start in Colorado in 1984 to my time in Kansas City, TCU, and South Carolina. More importantly, I'd like to thank my family, my two kids, Lauren and Ryan, especially my wife for 40 years, Charlene, for their understanding of the countless times when Dad couldn't be there because he had to work. It's been a great ride, and I have so many memories to cherish. I've been blessed beyond measure, doing things that a small town boy from Iowa never dreamed of. I don't know what the next chapter of my life holds, but I'm looking forward to seeing what doors God opens for me. Ever loyal and forever to thee, Steve Fink. Steve Fink is one of the best guys I've known. He's a consummate professional. His love for the Gamecocks did nothing but grow over his time in Columbia. He always treated me fair. And I remember him giving us access at thebigspur.com when we were a startup. And have always appreciated everything the thinker did, his social media presence. And I started referring to him as the thinker when I would retweet or have a comment on one of his social media posts as a term of endearment, just like the head ball coach, because Steve Fink, a consummate professional, and I appreciate his 21 years of service at my and at our alma mater and our team, the University of South Carolina, and I wish him and his family nothing but the very best. So that will be a wrap for me. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. If you like this podcast, hit the like button, subscribe, join our growing YouTube family. And if you would like this podcast every day, Monday through Friday, and on Sundays, and once a week, usually on Tuesday nights, except during high school baseball season, we have the Garnet and Black Town Hall, which is an interactive Zoom call for our VIP subscribers. You can find us at patreon.com/Gamecock Pod, all lowercase, no spaces in between. So thanks to our guest today, Michael Sauls, who we kept too long, but he stayed anyway and provided great content, and always appreciate him. And Alex Jones, who's in North Carolina today, safe travels to him, and he'll be posting big stories of his visits on thebigspur.com, which will be changing names. And so it will be, I don't know what it'll be, but JC and I founded the Big Spur in 2007 as a labor of love, and it's something we wanted to do. My life changed. I fell in love. I wound up moving to Texas for a job and a woman, but not necessarily in that order. And I wound up having that beauty behind me right there, who is my heart. And JC and Tony, they did a phenomenal job, as has John Whittle, Hale McGranahan, Alex Jones. Those guys are all awesome. I wish them nothing but the best, and it is in good hands with Whittle and Hale and Alex. So until next week, Keith Alsep saying, go Gamecocks. God bless all of you that watch live, that listen on Apple, Spotify, on the Believe Network, all of our Patreon family who will also watch or listen. Until next week, God bless all of you, and God bless America, and God protect our troops. I am out of here.